When we need protection from those who were sworn to protect us, the whole system is broken. Today, we look at excessive force and brutality of our local law enforcement. Let's go to Alex Logan in the command center. Alex?
Conflicting accounts from local law enforcement and eyewitnesses have made it difficult to get to the bottom of what exactly happened less than 2 weeks ago. And the lack of dashboard video cameras in Ferguson police cruisers may prevent us from ever knowing the full truth. According to Ferguson Police Chief Thomas Jackson, this spring the department purchased 2 dashboard cameras and 2 wearable body cameras, but the equipment hasn't been installed because the department doesn't have the money to cover the cost. So after seeing that same department meet peaceful protesters with tanks, armored personnel carriers, and military-grade rifles, can you believe it couldn't raise the $3,000 needed to install the dash cams?
Well, that is kind of humorous and sad, isn't it? That they've got all this equipment to wage war, but they have no equipment to put a couple cameras up to see what's going on. The problem to me, though, comes down to this also: the use of lethal force. First of all, I oppose the death penalty to begin with, but you're putting the death penalty out there on the street with the use of lethal force against crimes that are in the courtroom could not rise to that level. You know, the only thing that rises to the level of the death penalty is murder. So unless you're out there committing murder, at what point do you use lethal force? That's the big question, I guess. That's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Go ahead, Alex.
Well, do you think the tragic outcome would have differed if Officer Wilson, and for that matter, Michael Brown, knew that they were being filmed?
Well, maybe, I don't know. They always like to say that you'll behave differently because of this and that, but that's not really true either, because crime doesn't go down because a state has the death penalty. Crime still runs amok the same way it always does, death penalty or not. So will cameras make a difference? Maybe they would, I don't know. But it just seems to me we're in a world of cameras now. You can't do anything without being put under some type of surveillance. Where does that end? Sometimes technology might be too much for us. After all, remember, Jesse Ventura's never ever even owned a cell phone. And I'm doing all right.
Well, Governor, there is the example of Rialto, California, where after body-worn cameras were introduced in February 2012, public complaints against officers plunged 88% compared with the previous 12 months, and officers' use of force fell by 60%.
There's proof in the pudding then. Maybe the cameras do work.
Well, now let's take a look at the fast facts on Ferguson, Missouri and their police force. Of the 21,000 Ferguson residents, 63% are black, but of the 53 members of their police force, only 4 are African American. The police chief has said he's been trying to recruit more, but it hasn't worked thus far. They also account for 86% of police stops and 93% of arrests, according to the Missouri Attorney General's office.
You look at police forces today, they look like the military. Do they need to be that way? Have we pushed them to that level, we as a society? Or is there something else underlying in all this? I know I'm going off on a rant here, Alex, but I felt I need to. Continue on.
Well, Ferguson Mayor James Knowles would beg to differ with you, and I quote, "For people to come out and say that there's some long-standing anger or there's a history of racial tension is absolutely ridiculous. There's not a black-white divide in Ferguson." From these numbers alone, would you say there's no black-white divide in Ferguson, Governor?
I don't know. Is he black or white, the mayor?
He is a white man.
He's a white man, so he obviously won the black vote, or the blacks aren't voting. And maybe it's true. Maybe Ferguson was this bedroom community that all of a sudden erupted over this event. That creates a problem in itself then, doesn't it? How do we avoid an event like this happening and causing it in another city which may be identical to this one? We understand the police have difficult jobs. We understand that. But the use of lethal force, I think, is becoming far too much. The alternative, the accepted alternative today, and lethal force should only be used as a last resort for a crime that warrants it.
Well, the use of lethal force has sparked protests and demonstrations in Ferguson and across the nation. Tomorrow, we'll take a look at a vigil that was held in Los Angeles last Thursday. But the law enforcement response has been frighteningly militant. Numerous videos on the internet have shown peaceful protests being fired on with rubber bullets, cops shooting tear gas into a family's backyard while protesters had their hands up, Officers in riot gear gassing a crew from Al Jazeera, then dismantling their equipment with guns drawn, and even a reporter from the Washington Post and one from the Huffington Post being arrested for trespassing while writing in a McDonald's.
That's dangerous because there's something called the First Amendment, people, and we're watching all of our Bill of Rights disappear to this government that's supposed to work for us. But it ain't gonna happen as long as you keep electing Democrats and Republicans. As long as you keep electing them, this is what you're gonna get. And I'm fearful of it because to me, in looking at the way everything sets up now, martial law is right around the corner. Isn't it interesting that if we go to war with another country, we don't allow tear gas or gas to be used at war, but yet we allow it for our police forces against our own people? Isn't that correct, Alex?
That's correct. According to the Chemical Weapons Convention of 1993, tear gas is banned from use in warfare. However, it is legal in domestic riot control.
I'm astounded over that. I think that we should ban tear gas immediately. I think that if it's not allowed in war, we certainly shouldn't allow it to be used domestically. So I guess you can't do it to somebody you don't know, but you can use it on someone you do. Friendship's a unique thing, isn't it?
Well, sadly, Ferguson is only a microcosm of the violence and racism perpetrated against minorities across the United States every day. In the past month alone, 4 unarmed black men have been killed and 1 black woman was savagely beaten by the police. For example, Eric Garner was put into chokehold and slammed to the ground by New York City police on July 17th. He struggled and repeatedly gasped, "I can't breathe," while 5 officers held him down. He was initially approached for allegedly selling untaxed cigarettes. In Beaver Creek, Ohio, John Crawford was fatally shot in a Walmart while holding a BB gun that he picked up off the store's shelf. According to the mother of Crawford's children, who was on the phone with him, his last words before she heard gunshots from the police officers were, "It's not real." We could go on and on with shocking examples of the 400 police killings that occur each year, but the data is long considered flawed and largely incomplete, as the killings are self-reported by law enforcement and not all police departments participate, so the database undercounts the actual number of deaths. And according to University of South Carolina criminologist Jeff Alpert, who has long studied police use of deadly force, "I've looked at hundreds of departments and it is very rare that you can find someone say, 'Oh my gosh, we used excessive force.' In 98.9% of the cases, they are stamped as justified and sent along."
That's madness.